Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga Night 60. At the food bank debate, I ran into three really interesting young guys who seemed to be interested in what was going on in politics. And so I asked them, and they volunteered to join us today and talk about youth lack of engagement, frankly, in our political system, and why we have a turnout that some people think is less than 5% for people under the age of 30. So, guys, introduce yourself. Introduce each of you, if you could.
I'm Samuel Doyle. I grew up in Mississauga. Currently a student at U Ottawa. I'm studying political science and economics.
My name's Nick. I also grew up in Mississauga. I'm gonna go to TMU next year for psychology, or Ryerson, the previous name.
And my name is Kaden Brown. I started the first 9 years of my life in Toronto, and then I moved to Mississauga when I was 9 years old. And I'm in Bishop's University in Quebec for education.
Now, I met you guys all at this food bank debate. What motivated you to come out?
So I had my father had actually told me about it because he was out of town for the debate, but he didn't really know who he wanted to vote for, and he wanted to go see the debate, but he couldn't go. So he asked for me to go, and I just asked if my friends wanted to go as well.
So it was more of us going because we wanted to. It's our first time being able to vote.
Yeah.
We're all 18 now, and we wanted to really know who we were going to vote for before we voted to make sure we could make an educated decision at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think of the debate? Was it a good exchange of issues, or was it not?
Some of the stuff I don't feel really pertained to us, but there was other stuff that did, like transportation.
Yes.
But I think it was very interesting. I think it was extremely interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting to see because we've never seen one since we weren't 18 before, so we didn't have any reason to go. But now I think it's beneficial to go.
Yeah, definitely.
So the turnout in Mississauga in the last general election was 21% overall. People think it was over 50% for people the age of myself and that look like me, own homes, etc. And for people under the age of 30, particularly for renters or people that don't own homes, they think it was less than 5%. What causes that, incredible lack of engagement, lack of interest, voter apathy for particularly young people?
I think it's just like crossing over the 18 barrier, because you don't, it's not like a rule to go vote. It's more of a right. So your parents, they don't force you at all. So from 18, you don't vote, and then you get older and you don't really see a reason to it. That's what I think.
I also think I was talking to a couple of my other friends that didn't go to the debate, and they kind of just told me that they thought it was kind of like a waste of time. I think there's not a lot of clarification on what the role of mayor does and how it can impact our city. So
there's two individuals, maybe more, but two that I'm aware of that really are in your age category. One is a 19-year-old Muslim gal who is incredibly articulate, and the other one is a 30-year-old climate change green alternative guitarist performer that are young people running for mayor, and they've been excluded from most of the debates. And yet they're pretty articulate and they got a point of view. Most people are excluding them because they don't think they're in the top couple, but they've been excluded not because they've got good ideas, because they've got some great ideas. If they were included more, would that change people's interest, particularly young people's interest, do you think?
I don't think so, because everyone says that they want younger people in roles of power, but when it comes to younger people, they don't actually vote for them anyways. So I personally don't think it would change anything.
I'm not really sure about that one. I think that even having them there could be better because it's showing more like inclusion and stuff for all ages. But then again, I doubt they'd even get in the end.
Well, they may not get in, but does it get more people interested in the process and coming out to vote?
It might.
I think it could. Yeah, definitely.
Some other people have suggested that we should lower the age of voting to 16, and that if it was 16, then frankly half of the people would vote for the first time while they're still in high school, and therefore civics classes and other things would hopefully motivate people to vote. And some of the examples they give is that if you start doing blood donations when you're in high school, the probability that you continue to do blood donations goes up something like fourfold. you know, I used to work in the beer business, and I don't think you guys are drinking beer, but the interest beer companies have in getting people to drink their brand of beer in university is the propensity goes up by twofold. If someone starts drinking one beer brand in university, they'll continue to drink it in the future. Would voting in high school increase voting long term, and is that good or bad?
I think for sure it would, because high school, you know, it's your fundamental years really of growing up. So if you have that seed planted at 16, you're 100% gonna at least continue to do so in the future.
What do you guys think?
I
Is
think
16 too young to vote, or is it okay?
I think it might be a little too young. I don't know if you have a fully developed opinion at 16. I just know like what my opinion was at 16, and I don't know if I thought I should be voting. I think you still have a lot of influence from your parents as well as the school system. So I think maybe it would get more voter turnout, but I don't know if it would be a dynamic opinion that really should be contributing to who is mayor or who is prime minister.
And I'd like to add on to that. I think that's a really good point, because I feel like it would have a way bigger turnout and it would help people to vote more in the future. But again, is 16 the right age to start voting at? Is it beneficial to start voting at 16? There's different views as you get older and your brain hasn't fully developed by then as well.
I think the question really is like, there would be more voter turnout, but like what would it be and why would it be? Like, I feel like no one's voting for who they want because of the policies, but rather who they're told to vote for if they're 16.
You think that lessens when you're 18 or 19?
I think it does lessen, especially because at 18 or 19, like not everyone goes into secondary education, but when people do go into secondary education and they're forced to be more independent, when you're 18, you kind of get more independence. You have to start making decisions for yourself. Then you kind of understand how you feel about the world and how you think things should be run. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, no.
I still think there's value in the opinion of it, like a 16-year-old. Like they still have, you know, an opinion, right? So no matter what it is, if it's not as developed as, you know, a 30-year-old's vote would be, it's still a citizen of the city and someone that should be able to vote.
I got to tell you, I agree with you. I think that, you know, there's a lot of 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds that may not have the most informed, educated decision. But our democracy is about everyone getting a vote. And, you know, at one point in time, it was only landowners that could get a vote, and only people of one color could get a vote. And then we obviously extended that and gave all sexes, all landowners, renters, etc., the vote. And for some reason, we stuck on the age of 18. I'm not sure why that's the right number. And I do think that we've got to do something to get young people more involved. You know, Australia has compulsory voting, and something like 97-98% of the people vote versus our, you know, 21% municipally and 38 to 42% provincially and federally. You guys mentioned transit as an issue. What other issues are important to you guys?
So I think the biggest thing for me is as I'm finishing university in a few years, I don't really have an inclination to come back to Mississauga because I'm so worried about the pay I will get as a teacher and if I'll be able to afford my own housing. And I'm just worried about the future, and seeing the housing prices kind of all over Ontario, it makes me want to go live in Nova Scotia with my girlfriend or go over to BC and try over there, because it just doesn't seem like I can afford my own home here.
Well, the reality is you probably can't. You know, we've had out migration from the GTA to you know, more rural cities or towns in Ontario. We've had out migration to Alberta, Calgary, and Edmonton, and we've had out migration to the United States. And so people are voting with their feet that it's too expensive. You can get a place in Niagara Falls, Canada, versus Niagara Falls, the US, that is 4 times more expensive in Canada than it is just across the border. And businesses are moving, individuals are moving. And I think that, you know, StatsCan and CMHC and lots of other commentators have suggested it's the municipal government planning zoning process that is one of the major reasons why it takes 5 to 7 years to get a house or a development approved, and it takes 2 years to build it. And so, you know, why does it take 3 to 4 times as long to push the paper around City Hall as it does to actually build something. And so I think that's a big problem. The other issue is these development fees, and you may not be aware of this, but over 30% of the cost of building a new house or a condo in Mississauga is taxes. And it's the most regressive tax system we have, you know, in our whole tax system, because it is paid for primarily by young people that are getting into home ownership or even rental, or newcomers to our community, or renters that want to become homeowners. It's, I think, incredibly unfair. But council doesn't seem willing to, or think they're willing to change, or think they're responsible. What do you guys think of that?
You can go. No.
I just think, I really think that's ridiculous, to be honest. I see how expensive houses are now, and just like Kaden said, I don't see a future where I can be able to afford a house. I can't like live in the city that I want to, or where I grew up. And the fact is that should 30%, like you said, 30% be from property taxes? No, I really don't think that we should be funding public systems off of people that are just trying to be able to live in a house. Like, I really do think that is ridiculous. And I remember at the debate you were mentioning, and some of the other people were mentioning, just building more and cutting those taxes just so we would be able to have more houses, keep that, have a surplus of houses we could afford that were cheap. And I think that really is, that just makes sense to me. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of different taxes. It's not just the property tax; it's these development fees that are charged on all new houses, and then it's the GST and HST on development that is a substantial amount, and all those things added together equal 30%. And I think that the worst is these development fees that are an attempt to finance all of the costs of construction of new infrastructure within the city. New libraries, new police stations, new sewers, new everything, and it is way above the actual cost. And I think it is a society cost, and I don't think that it's something that should be leveled on just newcomers to the community. What other issues? So we got housing, we got transit. Anything else?
Just to add on to the housing thing, because there's also the rental side of it, right? Because my family rents, and it's almost impossible to find another home to be able to go to, because rent prices are skyrocketed right now, as well as they're asking for like payments in advance. So you need to pay like at least 9 months in advance to even be considered for the spot for the home. So it's almost impossible to move out right now. Anyway, so I think also adding or building more new homes that could be rentable would definitely help that issue as well.
I agree with you completely. I've been proposing getting rid of development fees on all purpose-built rental and any condominium under the cost of about 500 grand.
Yeah.
Any other issues?
Jobs.
Yeah.
You were talking about jobs.
Because it's also the job market right now is so saturated. I've been applying to jobs for maybe 6-7 months. Impossible to find one. It's very difficult right now.
I think that this is an issue that hasn't been really brought to the forefront of people's minds. Youth unemployment in the Greater Toronto Area right now is 17%. It's like 4 or 5 times the provincial average. It's terrible, and you guys are probably feeling that.
Mm-hmm. It's very hard to even a minimum wage job to get that. So I can even imagine trying to get something more right now.
So you guys went to that debate. Do you think that your concerns were addressed? Were people speaking to you?
We did. I think the biggest thing that stood out was definitely the transit part, because we were kind of putting ourselves in the mind of when we were in high school, because now we can drive. Now we have cars. It's not as big of an issue for us, but when we didn't, we had to rely fully on the GO trains and the My Way bus systems and all of those, right? And you guys, I can't quite remember what you guys talked about, but we remember hearing something about the GO trains and having them be, what was it? It was, they would come, they were trained.
The proposal is to turn the Milton Mississauga line that goes, as you may know, on a diagonal right through Mississauga from Dixie and Dixie and Dundas all the way up to Lisgar in western Mississauga, into all-day two-way frequent GO train service, which is sort of what they've got on the Lakeshore line. On the Lakeshore line, it used to be every hour, and then it's every half hour. Now they're talking about every 15 minutes. And And it's been talked about for, over 20, 25 years. The analyses that were done had it as an 8-to-1 benefit to cost ratio. So, a incredible payback versus most transit lines that are, 2-to-1. And the analyses that have been done on that Scarborough extension or on the Shepherd subway actually analyzed that both of those were less than 1-to-1. So you didn't even get as much money back, net present value over time, as the cost of building it. So we never should have built it. And then in addition, if you think about that, not only do you have the benefit of, people going to work, but particularly if you added another station or two, it would be almost like a surface subway. So people would be going both ways, and not just to and from work, but to and from school, to and from, social activities, to and from friends. It would almost be like having a surface subway for Mississauga. I think it's a transformational change, and it's cheap, or cheaper to implement than an LRT or anything else, because it's on existing railway lines. It may not be perfectly located because it doesn't go up Huron-Ontario across Dundas, but Dixie, Cawthra, Huron-Ontario, and Mavis are sort of along Dundas, and so I think that it's almost a surface subway.
No, yeah, I think that's great, because I'm going back to how I'm thinking in high school, and something like that would just be like absolutely amazing to get around. Like, sometimes if you're going out late, it would be so hard to get home sometimes, because some of the buses would not be running, or some of the trains would take so long to get to the station, and having easier transportation that isn't cars or Uber would just be extremely beneficial.
Well, I'm closer to the GO train station on that line, but I'll often go down to the Lakeshore line, because if I want to go out for a drink after work, or someone invites me to an event, or a sporting event, or a concert or something like that, it's a $60, $70 Uber ride back late at night, because there's no, late night trains. But on the Lakeshore line there is. So I think it really is a mistake that we have not exploited that all day two-way freaking GO train service on that line. And it is transformational. Okay, so anything else that you guys want to say before we say goodnight?
Yeah, just to add on to the transportation thing, because I'm gonna be a commuter to Toronto next year, and it's gonna be because I live right beside the Cooksville GO station, and the trains there run from like 9 a.m. and then they stop at 11 and then continue for like till 4 to 6. So that little gap, it's just not enough to get to and from. So it just makes everything harder, as well as the construction on here in Ontario, delaying everything. So getting to Port Credit is another challenge in itself. So it's just going to be a very long commute with things right now. So
no question.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Touched on housing, work, transportation. Was there anything else that
I think they brought up food in the debate, right?
What
Like
was
food prices.
Oh, right.
Like
Yeah, we were going to
groceries,
talk about
affording groceries
we
and
were
stuff.
talking about, like, I was talking about how I'm scared, like I won't be able to afford my own home. But adding on to that, affording food on
Like
top of that,
expenses,
how expensive food has been recently and stuff, like getting bread is extremely expensive, eggs, milk, and seeing these prices, even going out to restaurants, how expensive it is.
And no question. I think that, they had the statistic that 8% of Mississauga residents made use of a food bank last year. And that's an astounding figure. Most of the usage, is interesting, is the last week of the first week of the month. And it's because people are skipping buying food because they've got to pay their rent or their mortgage. And I think therefore it comes back to housing, where there's not a lot that we can do in Mississauga to keep food prices down. That's sort of a global supply chain inflation, a cost issue, but we could keep housing prices down. And most people your age, you probably know this, and if you're applying for a mortgage, you'll know it, is they'll start adding in the cost of housing and transportation together. And most people think that's got to be below 50%, hopefully below 40% of your income. And so therefore, you may go for a cheaper home in Georgetown, but then if you've got to spend a lot more money on your transportation, your car, your insurance, parking, 407 tolls, etc., that all gets up. And so transit is critically important, because it's the combination of housing and transportation, transit or car, and how you're going to get to work, that ends up being sort of that fixed cost that you've got month in and month out. And is there enough left over for food and hopefully, some entertainment in life?
Yeah.
I strongly believe that shouldn't even be a question. Like, affording housing and food. Why is Why is that happening at all?
Because housing is too expensive. That's why it's happening. And I honestly believe, and I think most of the studies prove it out, it's that we are in Mississauga and Toronto and Vancouver and Victoria, the worst cities in Canada, the slowest cities in Canada to get approvals. And so therefore, you know, when you think about a developer that buys a piece of property, by 7 years later, when he finally gets approval to build something, the all-in cost of the land plus the interest plus the fees plus the development plus the risk plus the interest, et cetera, it doubles the cost. And you see this, developers going to the cities where they get quicker approvals and greater density, greater height, where it makes it easier to do business. I spoke with a well-known individual just this past week who said that it was ironic in this free enterprise system. It was Peter Van Leeuwen, you know, a former conservative cabinet minister, who said that he was shocked that the housing business has more regulation and red tape than any other industry in any other segment of society. And we think about it as this free enterprise capitalistic area. It's actually incredibly heavily regulated. So I think that's the challenge. And we need people in government that are going to, you know, reduce red tape, make regulations more streamlined, get housing improved more quickly. Guys, really appreciate you coming on the show and chatting with me about youth unemployment, about housing, about transit, and about the need to get young people involved. You know, I was really encouraged when we chatted, and think if there's more people like you, there's hope for our future.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again for having us.
That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thank you for joining. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on 960 a.m. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videos are available on my website, briancrombie.com. Good night, everybody. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Good night.
And get out and vote on June 10th. Even if it's not for me, get out and vote because it's critically important. And if it's for me, go tell all your friends and neighbors that they should vote for me. Thanks. Good night, everybody.